Ever get that feeling like, whoa, is my brain messing with me right now? Like, is this real? We're diving deep into that feeling today, but not in the way you might think. Substance-induced psychotic disorder is it's the topic du jour. Psychosis, brought on by stuff you actually put in your body.
It really is a fascinating area, and the range of substances that can trigger this, it's pretty remarkable. We're not just talking about the usual suspects, the illegal drugs.
Okay, so what else are we talking about here?
Alcohol, even some prescription medications, and get this, even over-the-counter stuff can sometimes be the culprit.
Over the counter. Okay, now I'm getting a little nervous about my medicine cabinet. Like, what kind of things are we talking about here? Give me some examples.
Well, researchers have even linked some common NSAIDs, like ibuprofen, to causing psychotic symptoms in some people.
Ibuprofen, like the stuff I take for a headache.
It is rare, but it's thought to be due to the way these drugs can impact certain pathways in the brain.
That is wild. Okay, so before we all go and toss out our ibuprofen, let's back up a sec. For those of us who don't spend all day thinking about brains, what exactly is psychosis? Break it down for us.
Yeah, good point. Psychosis, it's more than just seeing things that aren't there, more than just hallucinations, although those can be a part of it for sure, but it really affects a person's whole way of thinking and interacting with the world. Judgment, behavior, even their grasp on reality can get distorted.
So it's not just like visual.
No, not at all. It can also involve delusions, which are basically these really fixed false beliefs that a person just clings to no matter what the evidence says. And this can lead to, all sorts of problems, disorganized thinking, trouble communicating, behavior that's out of the ordinary, the whole nine yards.
So there are like different types of psychotic disorders. I mean, the one that always comes to mind first for me is schizophrenia.
Oh, absolutely. Schizophrenia, schizoaffective disorder, schizophreniform disorder. Yeah, there's a whole spectrum.
Yeah.
There's even something called shared psychotic disorder, which is pretty fascinating. It's where someone develops delusions because they're very close to someone who already has them. So it's like their reality gets warped just by being around that person.
Whoa, that's wild. Like their brains sync up in a way.
It's really incredible. But today we're focusing on the one that's kind of a real detective story, substance-induced psychotic disorder.
Okay, so that's our main suspect.
Yeah.
So what are the things that can like throw this particular wrench into the works of our brains? What sets this apart from those other types of psychotic disorders that you were just talking about?
Well, think of it as like a whole rogues gallery of substances that can be involved. You've got, your legal and illegal drugs, alcohol, like we said, that whole surprising list of medications, both prescribed and over the counter, and even, believe it or not, environmental toxins can play a role.
Environmental toxins. That sounds straight out of like a sci-fi movie.
Sometimes truth is stranger than fiction, right? But yeah, usually it's not quite that dramatic. More often we're talking about things like, maybe someone has some weird interaction between different prescription medications they're taking, or maybe they accidentally ingest something toxic.
Oh, okay. That makes more sense.
Oh. Yeah. And of course, overdosing on recreational drugs is a big one, and so is withdrawal. When the brain's used to getting a certain substance and then it's suddenly cut off, it can definitely throw things out of whack.
So anything that really messes with our brain chemistry is a potential suspect, right?
Exactly. And the tricky part is in any good mystery, there are red herrings. Doctors have to rule out all those other possible causes of psychosis, like the disorders we were just talking about, before they can, really zero in on substance-induced psychotic disorder. It's all about finding the right clues.
So it's not as simple as just like, oh, someone seeing things must be caused by a substance. We got to put on our detective hats here.
Oh, for sure. Doctors use a whole set of criteria to make the diagnosis. It's not just about whether the person's having hallucinations or delusions, although, that's obviously a big part of it. They have to establish this really clear link between those symptoms and the use of a substance or even withdrawal from a substance.
So it's like proving that the substance is the actual culprit, right? Not just that it happened to be around at the time.
Exactly. They look at the intensity of the symptoms, how long they last. Are they stronger or lasting longer than what you typically expect with that particular substance? And they also have to rule out delirium, which is a whole other can of worms. We can maybe save that for another deep dive.
Ooh, foreshadowing. Okay, so diagnosis is one piece of the puzzle, but once we've kind of zeroed in on substance-induced psychotic disorder, what are like the hallmarks of this thing? What makes it unique?
Okay, so this is where things get really interesting. The hallucinations or delusions, they have to be directly caused by the substance. It's not, not just enough for them to happen around the same time. We're talking cause and effect here.
So timing is everything.
Timing and that direct link. And here's another twist. Even if someone knows that their experience is substance induced, it doesn't make it any less of a problem.
I get it. That makes sense.
Right. I mean, just because you know you're hallucinating because you took something, it doesn't make the experience any less, real or terrifying in the moment.
I see what you mean. Knowing why it's happening doesn't magically make it go away.
Exactly. And the symptoms also have to be severe enough to need attention and, on their own. It's not just about being intoxicated or going through withdrawal. We're talking about, psychosis that really needs to be addressed as a separate issue.
This is all starting to make sense now, but I bet it gets even more complicated when you have to try to distinguish substance-induced psychotic disorder from those other, those other psychotic disorders, right? It's like trying to pick the right suspect out of a lineup.
You hit the nail on the head. That's where the real detective work begins. You ready to follow the clues?
Be the way.
Okay, so we're on the case, right? We're trying to solve this psychosis mystery. And one of the first things doctors do is something called, it's called differential diagnosis. And basically it's all about ruling out any other possible explanations for why someone might be experiencing these symptoms.
So it's like a mental health version of House, right? They gotta consider all the possibilities before they can figure out what's really going on.
Exactly. So in this episode of House, Mental Mysteries Edition, what are the other conditions that could kind of mimic substance-induced psychotic disorder? Well, for starters, there are some medical conditions that can actually produce these psychotic-like symptoms, things like epilepsy or Huntington's disease.
Okay.
And you can imagine this can make things even trickier because folks with those conditions are often taking medications. So then it becomes this whole question of, is it the underlying illness that's causing the psychosis, or is it a side effect of the medication?
Oh, so it's a real chicken or the egg situation.
It really is. It can be a real tangled web for sure. And then of course you've got delirium and dementia to throw into the mix as well. Both of those involve some level of cognitive impairment, but they have very different underlying causes and they present in different ways.
So with all these potential suspects, what are like the key clues that can help doctors crack the case? What are they looking for to determine if it really is the substance that's the main offender here?
Right. So remember how we talked about timing? That's really a huge clue. When did the symptoms first appear, in relation to when the person was using the substance? If those symptoms were already there, before the substance entered the picture, well, then it's more likely to be one of those primary psychotic disorders rather than something that's substance induced.
So that timeline is like our smoking gun.
It's a big piece of the puzzle, that's for sure. Another clue is the pattern of the substance use itself. Do the symptoms persist, even after the substance is out of their system? Because if they do, well, then that points away from substance-induced psychotic disorder and more toward something like a deeper-rooted mental health condition.
So if those symptoms are hanging around, like a bad smell, then we know something else is probably at play.
Exactly. And we also look at the intensity of the symptoms, are they more extreme than what we would normally expect with that particular substance? Because if they are, then that could be a red flag that something else is brewing beneath the surface.
It's like you're looking for anything out of the ordinary, anything that doesn't quite fit the usual pattern.
Yeah, exactly. Family history plays a role too, If there's a family history of mental illness, well, then that can increase the likelihood that we might be dealing with a primary psychotic disorder. And then how the person responds to treatment is another really big clue. So if they continue to struggle even when they're in traditional like substance abuse programs, well, that could be a sign that maybe the substance use is only one piece of a much larger puzzle.
So you're really looking at the whole picture, right? Not just focusing on one symptom or one possible cause. It's like piecing together a jigsaw puzzle.
That's a great analogy. And sometimes, believe it or not, the reason why someone is using the substance in the first place can actually provide some valuable clues.
Yeah.
So are they self-medicating, Are they trying to cope with some underlying mental health issues? That's a question that doctors often try to explore.
So it might be a way of, dealing with something that they don't really know how to handle otherwise. It's like a way of masking the problem.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. It's not always about, seeking pleasure or escaping reality or anything like that. Sometimes it really is a desperate attempt to try to feel better, even if it's just temporary.
This is really highlighting, just how complex and multifaceted substance-induced psychotic disorder can be. There's so much more going on beneath the surface. It's not always what it seems.
I couldn't agree more. And all this detective work really, really underscores the importance of having this, comprehensive approach to diagnosis and treatment. You really have to treat the whole person, not just the symptoms.
Speaking of treatment, what are some of the ways that doctors can actually help people who are dealing with substance-induced psychotic disorder?
Well, like you might imagine, it varies a bit depending on the specific substance that's involved and how severe the symptoms are. But there's often a lot of overlap with the treatment for primary psychotic disorders like
Yeah.
schizophrenia. The goal is really the same,
Yeah.
It's to stabilize their mental state and address any underlying issues that might be contributing to the psychosis.
So it's like whether it's the substance or an underlying condition that's causing the fire, the goal is to put the fire out.
I love that analogy. That's a good one. So sometimes hospitalization is necessary, especially if the person is a danger to themselves or to others, or if they need like really intensive care like detoxification. So it's about providing that safe and structured environment where they can get the support they need.
A controlled environment where the focus can just be solely on getting better.
Exactly. Yeah. And medical care is essential too, of course, to address any underlying medical conditions or any complications that might have arisen from the substance use. They might, need treatment for organ damage or nutritional deficiencies, for example. Substance abuse can really take a toll on the body.
It's easy to forget about the physical impact, when you're so focused on the mental and emotional effects.
Right. And then there's counseling, which is absolutely key for addressing both the substance abuse and any co-occurring mental health disorders. So it's really a two-pronged approach to help them get back on their feet.
So it's addressing the substance use and the underlying mental health issues at the same time.
Yep, you got it. It's about, achieving and maintaining abstinence, getting those psychiatric symptoms under control, improving their coping mechanisms and preventing relapse down the line. It's a lot of work, but it's really important work.
Yeah, it sounds like a long road to recovery. What other tools are in the toolbox, so to speak?
Well, detoxification is another crucial step, especially if the person is physically dependent on the substance. This involves safely and carefully withdrawing from the substance under medical supervision to minimize those really tough withdrawal symptoms.
Detox can be a real roller coaster,
Yeah.
right?
Oh, absolutely. It's not something to take lightly at all. And then, of course, there are medications that are often used to manage the symptoms and support the recovery process.
What kinds of medications are we talking about here?
Well, it really depends on the individual and their specific situation, but it might include, antipsychotics, to help reduce hallucinations and delusions, antidepressants to manage mood, anti-anxiety meds to ease, anxiety and so on. It's really about finding the right combination of tools to fit their needs.
Like a tailor-made prescription for the mind.
Yeah, I like that. That's a great way to put it. And then in rare cases, surgical care might be necessary to address organ damage that's been caused by the substance abuse. So for example, someone with really severe liver damage from alcohol abuse, they might need a liver transplant.
That's a pretty stark reminder of, the potential long-term consequences of substance abuse.
Yeah.
But it sounds like there's hope for recovery, right?
Absolutely. The good news is that the prognosis for substance-induced psychotic disorder is generally pretty good if the person stops using the substance.
That is encouraging to hear, but I'm guessing it's not always a smooth journey.
You're right. The psychotic symptoms, they can sometimes stick around for a while, depending on the substance and how long it takes to kind of fully clear their system. And in some cases, substance abuse can actually cause some lasting changes in the brain that can make the person more vulnerable to having future psychotic episodes.
Oh, wow. So it's not just about stopping the substance use. It's also about managing those potential long-term effects too. It's like putting the fire out and then making sure that it doesn't reignite.
Yeah, exactly. Which brings us to the importance of prevention.
So how do we prevent this whole mystery from unfolding in the first place?
Well, it might sound like common sense, but avoiding or moderating, drug and alcohol use is key, and it's crucial to only take medications, as prescribed by a doctor, and minimizing exposure to environmental toxins can also help reduce the risk.
So it's about being aware of what we're putting into our bodies and our environment.
Yeah.
Knowledge is power, right?
Absolutely. It's all about, taking those proactive steps to protect our mental and physical health.
This has been such an eye-opening, deep dive into substance-induced psychotic disorder. We've really covered a lot of ground from the the initial investigation to figuring out the culprit and exploring those treatment options.
Yeah, I agree. We've gone from gathering clues to analyzing the evidence and exploring potential solutions.
It's a good reminder that mental health is just as important as physical health, and asking for help is never a weakness. It takes strength to admit that you need support, and there's so many resources available to help people get back on track.
Well said. And I think it's important to emphasize that recovery is possible. With the right support and treatment, people can overcome substance-induced psychotic disorder and go on to live full and meaningful lives.
That's a message of hope that we all need to hear. So before we wrap up our investigation for today, let's move into the final part of our deep dive, where we'll leave our listeners with some hope for thought. Stay tuned.
Welcome back, everybody. As we kind of wrap up our case here on substance-induced psychotic disorder, the thing that really sticks out to me is how this whole deep dive, it really shows us like how connected our brains are to the things that we put in our bodies. It's like this delicate dance, and sometimes things get out of sync.
Yeah. It really underscores that even, substances that we think of as being pretty common, pretty commonplace, that they can have these really, really powerful effects on our mental state. And sometimes, totally unexpected effects. It's like our brains are these incredibly intricate machines with all these finely tuned settings, and even the slightest change to that internal chemistry can really throw things off balance.
Mm-hmm.
It's like we got to treat our brains with respect, right? Like not overload them with too many substances or unexpected combinations.
Yeah.
But I'm curious if even like seemingly harmless things can trigger psychosis in some people. I mean, what is it that makes some individuals more vulnerable to this than others?
That's a fantastic question, and it's something that researchers are still trying to really fully understand. But we do know that it's not just about the the substance itself. It's about that unique makeup of each person's brain and their individual vulnerabilities.
Right.
Think of it like this: you and I, we could both drink the same cup of coffee, but how our brains react to that caffeine, it could be completely different.
Right.
Based on our genetics, our personal history, even things like environmental stressors.
That kind of makes me think of the whole nature versus nurture debate. It's not just one or the other. It's the combination really that shapes how we respond to the work.
Exactly. And it really highlights the need for personalized medicine, recognizing that what works for one person might not work for another. It's about moving away from that one size fits all approach and really tailoring the treatment to the individual's specific needs.
So it's like a puzzle, and every
Yeah.
person's puzzle is just a little bit different.
That's a great way to think about it. It's not just about, prescribing the right medication. It's also about, considering things like therapy, lifestyle changes, and
Right.
really building a strong support network. You
Mm.
you have to look at the whole picture, all the pieces of the puzzle.
So as we kind of put this case to rest, what's one final thought that you wanna leave our listeners with? Something for them to kind of ponder as they go about their day.
I think he really comes back to mindfulness.
Mm.
We live in a world where we're constantly bombarded with substances. Whether it's caffeine or alcohol or prescription meds or over the counter remedies. It's really easy to take these substances for granted and to assume that they're harmless or that we're in control. But substance-induced psychotic disorder, it's a pretty stark reminder that even those commonly used substances, they can have these unforeseen consequences, especially when you combine them with those individual vulnerabilities that we talked about. So my advice would be to be mindful, to be aware of the potential risks, and always consult with a healthcare professional before you start or stop any substance.
That's such an important message. It's about respecting the power of these substances and recognizing that our brains are precious. They deserve to be protected. Well, on that note, I think we've reached the end of our deep dive into substance-induced psychotic disorder.
Hmm.
I hope you found this journey as fascinating and insightful as we have.
It's been a pleasure. Really enjoyed, exploring this complex topic with you.
And remember, if you're interested in learning more, be sure to check out the links in our show notes. And as always, thanks for joining us on the deep dive. We'll see you next time for another intriguing case.